I'm Andrew Corbett, and this is another weekly offensive breakdown for West Virginia. Today we're going to look at the concepts that West Virginia ran against Kansas State as they tried to beat their man coverage. The Wildcats, they ran a lot of man coverage in this game, and West Virginia clearly had a plan to try and stop that. This is an RPO concept that West Virginia ran a few times in this game, where the two routes are a drag, and then the slot guy, in this case Winston Wright, he runs a little skinny post here that creates a high-low. These RPO passes, they want to be close, they want to be quick and towards the middle of the field, because you're going to pull that ball once these guys crash down and then hit the middle of the field where that space opened up, and that's exactly how they attack it here. In this case, he pulls it from Letty Brown. You can tell it's an RPO because these guys are all run blocking, both attached tight ends to the right side here, and the offensive lineman, obviously. All three linebackers, they come down, but these two safeties also come down as well, which opens up a massive gap in the middle of the field, which is exactly what the RPO tries to do. So in this case, skinny post and then the drag route underneath. But Diggy's eyes, he's going instantly to Winston right here, as you can see. I'll play it. He pulls it. See how all three linebackers and both safeties come down. His eyes instantly go. His eyes are instantly looking directly at Winston Wright. And so here's the drag underneath, but a little skinny post from the slot. Beautiful execution up until Winston Wright just couldn't hang on to the ball, which unfortunately there happened to be a defender right there. But that had big play potential and just could not execute. Here's my second example of the play. West Virginia running the same exact thing, just have a different formation. Instead of two attached tight ends, they have an extra receiver on the far side. But you see the same thing. Outside receiver, this is Sean Ryan. He works his way inside, and the skinny post from Winston Wright from the slot. That's the first guy Diggy's going to go to every time on this RPO. They're faking a little run with TJ Banks as the lead blocker. But as you can see, when I play this, all three linebackers and the safety, the middle field free safety, they all come down, which means it's an easy read for Diggy to pull. And this time they actually do execute on it. So there it is. They fake the little lead block, TJ Banks run. And there's a drag, there's a skinny post. As you can see, free safety and all three linebackers, they bid on it. So of course he pulls it, and that opens up the field right behind those linebackers in for a first down. This is West Virginia's favorite man coverage beater. They ran this multiple times against Kansas State, considering how much they did run that man coverage. It's just a very simple mesh concept that the air raid offenses typically run a lot of, where the inside receivers, they both run the drag routes or the mesh routes, and that's really how this play works. Those are the two most important routes. Outside guys, they either run a corner and a post like they do here, and the running back always leaks out to the flats. How this play works against man coverage is these two guys, when they cross, it creates a little rub route. The middle where they cross, it's called the mesh point. At that mesh point, the two man defenders covering them, they either get bumped into each other or they bump into the other receiver, and it frees up the other receiver. It's kind of confusing me explaining it, but I'll show you how it works here. Let me play this. As you can see, Kansas State, they're running man coverage. When these two guys cross, they typically coach receivers to touch hands. They like touch each other's hands as they cross. That's how you know you're doing the rub right here. See, he actually sticks his hand out because this guy, he's covering Winston Wright. This guy, he's covering TJ Banks in this case. And so when they cross, TJ Banks just slams into Winston Wright's defender, which frees up Winston Wright entirely. That's why this play is so good against man coverage and why it's so commonly ran. And Diggy missed him here. Right when you get that pick, right when they pass the mesh point, right when they get that rub, that's when you throw the football. He didn't throw it to him here. Here, West Virginia runs the same concept, but I have a little different look. And I want you guys to pay attention to the progressions of Diggy here on this play. First progression in a mesh concept is always the running back out of the flat. Second progression, it's always the mesh routes from the inside receivers. Number 2, Number 3, does not matter what order, but he's looking at both those routes next. The fourth progression, in this case, it's Reese Smith coming from the outside slot. He's in the fourth progression. He's going to come up behind those mesh routes in case it's zone coverage, in which case it is in this case. And he just tried to create a flood in the middle of the field. And your very last progression is the corner route. Diggy does not go through his progressions fast enough on this play. That's why it doesn't work. He forces this ball to the middle of the field on this fourth progression. If he felt pressure and just forced it. If he waited longer, went to his fifth possession, this guy's wide open in the corner because everything else is covered up. He just could not get to the fifth progression, and he forced it to the fourth one in the middle of the field. So I'll show it here. Ball is snapped. As you can see, two mesh routes. Kansas State's in zone coverage. You see Diggy's eyes. They were first on Letty Brown. Now they're on the two mesh routes. But it's zone coverage. They're not open. So where does he look after? Oh, it's zone coverage. We're trying to flood the middle of the field. So he just forces it to this hitch route, which is actually completely covered up as well. But look at this guy right here. I'm not going to replay it, but look at this guy. He is so open. You just have to go through that fifth and final progression to get to him. That didn't happen here. He was feeling pressure, but that's how that play works. If you get to the fifth progression at halftime, he's almost always going to be open if nothing else was. This is my last example, West Virginia running the mesh concept. In this case, it's the exact same play as last time. Winston Wright, he's going to sit down above these two mesh routes. Letty Brown, he's going to leak his way to the flats, and the outside receiver runs a corner to the boundary. In this case, it's against a man coverage, and it works really well. Diggy does a really nice job here. See his eyes? They instantly look to the running back. They'll do that every single time on the mesh concept. Then he turns really quickly to these two mesh routes. See the two-man defenders? Look at that bump. There's the bump right there. The other receiver, he bumps off. He gives a little rub, a little pick route, which opens up the space for Ford Wheaton. And Diggy makes a nice throw in there. It's a first down. He gets a lot of yards after the catch. One thing I want to note for Texas, West Virginia's upcoming opponent, they like to run a whole lot of zone coverage, and they very rarely bring only 3 defenders. So they like to blitz and run zone coverage, which means you're not really going to see a whole lot of the mesh concept against them. You'll see more of the flood concepts like the run, like the hitch and the outs, and the clear out concepts, which I'll show up upcoming here that they ran versus Kansas State as well. Here's a clear out concept that I've talked before. West Virginia ran this twice on this very drive against Kansas State. This case was against zone coverage. Sam Jenks, he starts outside but works his way across the middle of the field, and everybody else is working their way down the field, including these two guys. They run a little scissors concept where one goes in, one goes out. But this just clears up all that space. West Virginia likes running this on second and third and long situations where they're behind the sticks, where teams are more likely to play conservative zone coverage, where they can abuse that and go underneath on this clear out concept. Like I said, I've talked about this before, so I won't go in detail. You can check out the other video where I go more in depth. Everybody else goes deep, which opens up the zone coverage underneath for Sam James, who does a nice job getting some yards after the catch. This is the same drive just a few plays later for West Virginia. They run the same exact play here with Sam James from the inside slot working his way down the middle of the field, and everybody else is going vertical. This is a very simple clear out concept. They've ran a lot. I'm not going to go into much detail on this, except Kansas State, they bring a little pressure up the middle, and this is cover one man coverage. One high safety, everybody else is manned up. When Diggy sees that, he doesn't look to the clear out anymore. What Sam James, he's actually matched up on a safety that gives him a little bit of cushion here, so he has some space, but Diggy, he recognizes it's man coverage. So where does West Virginia go when it's cover one man? To Winston Wright, their best receiver in one-on-one coverage. He actually, Kansas State defender, he's in great coverage here. A little tug on the jersey, but he gets away with it. But that's a good shot for West Virginia. Diggy recognizes cover one man. He goes deep to Winston Wright on that time. Doesn't work there, but it's a good look. Here they run a simple tunnel screen concept that West Virginia likes to run every single game this season so far. I've talked about this type of play before. Ford Wheaton, they take it from the outside. This time he goes inside, Sam James blocks, and they pull the center and both guards to help get the blocks and set up that screen. Like I said, inside screen here. West Virginia loves running these type of plays. Kansas State's in zone coverage, so it works really well here. Winston Wright, I like how he gets his way down the field and picks up a block late in the play to spring Bryce Ford Wheaton for an extra few yards. I'm talking about this play specifically. I've talked about this before, but I'm going to mention this one again simply because A, West Virginia runs it a lot, and B, Texas, with all their zone coverage and zone blitzes that they run, I expect West Virginia to go to this type of play a lot versus Texas. Texas, I think you're going to see less vertical shots against Texas because West Virginia loves taking shots against man coverage, which Texas does not do a ton of. I think you'll see more of, underneath routes and then screens against the Longhorns. But I'll show it here. You see the center and both guards, they pull. Sam James comes out, gets a block. Bryce Ford Wheaton inside, and he gets a lot of yards and a first down here because Kansas State's in that zone coverage.